We also judge on presentation.
Well, you know what? If you can come up with $5,000 for a costume for me, then I won't have to make one. Till then, just stay out of my face.
Maybe you're just not as good as you think. Maybe you should pick another sport.
Suck my dick. This is fucking rigged.
Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin-Lundberg, and I'm here with Bex. How are you, Bex?
I'm good.
I'm so excited to get underway on our new episode regarding I, Tonya, and we're talking to the lead producer, Bryan Unkeless, and we had a little bit of a history with this movie, Bexy.
We almost had it.
We tried to finance and produce this movie with Bryan, but we were summarily rejected. And so...
But very nicely.
Very nicely, very kindly. But so we'll hear the tale of the tape from Bryan, and then afterwards we will reminisce about our memories.
Sounds good. I'm excited for this one.
Okay, cool. Let's get going.
Let's do it.
Bryan Unkeless, I'm so excited to be talking to you. I feel like it's been a while, but there was a time when I was pursuing I, Tonya, the subject of our discussion today, to partner with you and finance the film. Do you remember that?
I do.
You had to gently let me down, and that's how I knew you were a great producer.
Well, I hope I was honest.
You were gentle and lovely. And I just want to tell you, I interviewed Nina Jacobson a few weeks ago, and she spoke very lovingly of you and how you found Hunger Games. And so your reputation precedes you. But I want you to tell me your first memory of I, Tonya, and how you found it and how you built it, and just start from the beginning, and I'll pepper you with questions, and we'll get into it. We'll get into the sauce.
Great. Well, it's funny you bring up Nina, because Nina was my mentor. I worked for her for 8 years, and love her very much. And she taught me so much about story and kind of how to go about producing. And she's relentless, and she's direct, and she just was great. And so at the end of the last Hunger Games, I was kind of eager to go and try to pursue projects that, maybe spoke to me, but didn't work within that Color Force system.
Which was a very studio-driven system, right? The notion was just big books and franchises and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, it was, and very much in tune with Nina's taste.
Right.
And we have a overlapping taste, but there was times when we didn't. And also I was eager just to experience more, because that was something where Nina really wanted to wholeheartedly believe in every project that she did, and because of that, she was there in every aspect of it, which is great, which makes her a great producer. But working beneath her, I wanted to also have that opportunity to be there on set every day, to
be the guy.
Yeah, and so very lovingly asked Nina if I could move on, and we tried to work some things out where I'd be kind of feeding her, but ultimately, and it was naive actually, and kind of dumb, but also, I'm really glad I did. I set off to start Clubhouse Pictures, which was on my own, and we didn't have a slate, which was one of the most daunting days.
So you're just I'm going to start on my own. I'm leaving all the things I found, obviously at Color Force, because I worked there forever, and I'm just going to start clean, and I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, which the idea was that I really had good relationships with a bunch of writers that I had met through the years at Color Force, directors, and that, hopefully had some goodwill with some of the agents, and was just going to start building. And we were going to try to self-generate and go out and fish online and find books that were overlooked. And Scott Morgan, who was my assistant with Nina, came with me, and was an executive. And he's just the best about covering material and reading all new writers and scripts. And he highlighted I, Tonya, which was at the time was kind of being circulated, I think, not very widely, but was being circulated amongst smart executives as this is just a great fun script. but as almost like a sample in a way. It wasn't something available, but it wasn't yet being considered as like actual project.
Bryan, was it on the blacklist? Like, remind me, had it had any, like, were people talking? I just remember the Tonya Harding project and like hearing about it, but will you remind me like its path?
I do think it went to the blacklist, but at this point it wasn't. It was still not very widely circulated. And Stephen Rogers, who wrote it, wrote it on spec. He did everything on his own. Like he went and he met with Tonya. He got Tanya's life rights himself.
Wow.
Yeah, he met with Galuli and he interviewed him. And of course, the biggest challenge to telling that story is like, did she actually do it? Like, did she actually attack Nancy Kerrigan? And he had such a, I think, real breakthrough, a really masterful breakthrough in that as he was meeting and doing his research and meeting and hearing these people's portrayal of what happened, they were so wildly different. And he was like, the truth is like almost, it's so subjective. It's almost secondary to like the craziness of creating the reality afterwards and like what these people's realities are. And if you could kind of juxtapose and fold all of these different perspectives on top of each another, there's some truth in there that you can find, but it's just like every other major kind of occurrence, and especially with our twisted media and everything, like you don't really know what it is anyway. But that's in there lies the fun of the whole thing, and that's the story.
Like I, Tonya is a sort of play on I, Claudius, the sort of Roman tale, right? Of like a sort of unreliable narrator. But I feel like the structure is a little bit, she's the main narrator, but like in this script, it's like, it's her, it's Jeff, like ultimately found her to be so sympathetic. And I found her to be like a really winning protagonist. And I don't know if that was the intention or not, but like, what was the intention of Stephen?
Yeah, Stephen is a very genuine and loving person, just his nature. And he finds humor in everything, but he really grew to care about these people. So I think didn't bring a cynical lens to it. He really brought like, let's put these people in the light that like we all have some good parts. We all have some not as good parts. And he tried to show them as real people and accentuate some of the good parts also. And I think that's something that, and jumping ahead a little, I think that's something that Margot really liked about playing Tonya, was that she was contradictory in a lot of ways and complex, but really, I mean, she was so stigmatized around in American culture. I mean, literally, presidents would make jokes. We bring that up in the movie, like that she was the punchline for late night television for years and years and years.
Totally acceptable. Like no one felt bad about it. It was totally fine for everyone to like kick circle her for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the subtexts of the movie is like shining a light on that, where we love to build heroes and we love to build villains, and we kind of, the media is part of it and we ourselves participate in it, and the truth is somewhere more in between.
Right. Well, because it was funny, I was reading the background and there were some journalists who really felt that Tonya was her own worst enemy. And I think that is the like sort of resounding feeling that like she brought so much upon herself. And I feel like this movie is a little bit of a counterbalance to that, in that the circumstances in which she grew up, the mother that she had, she was clawing her way out of the gutter in a way, you know? And the only way she could do it was through her sheer force of will. It wasn't like she was a graceful little shrinking violet, you know?
Yeah, we liked that a lot, is that she was powerful and she really was kind of at times crass, and she had this kind of fighting spirit. And when you contrast that with some of the more like restrained, graceful qualities that you think ice skating is. In fact, you have to be an incredible athlete to be an ice skater. And she was so powerful, and everybody still respects that.
How did you win the day with the script? I do remember it, Bryan, being kind of a thing. Like it felt like an event script. Did you have like competition? Were there other producers vying for it?
There were. And I mean, will forever be thankful to Stephen for giving me and Scott a chance at it. Stephen is an established writer. He's had like movies made. This wasn't something where it was like easy for him to bet on me as a producer that's just starting my company. I just kind of led with passion, and it was authentic. I really needed the movie, and I promised him I'd work my ass off to get it made. And I think he believed that. I think he'd had some tough experiences where he was just felt like a cog in a wheel.
Yes.
In a lot of his other projects. And it was true. And there was this sense of like, what I could offer was a real sense of like collaboration and partnership, and that we would be in the foxhole together. And I think he appreciated that. We had a couple meetings. There was a lot of calls. And then finally he gave us the chance.
And had you met him before, or was this the first time you were sort of interacting with him?
No, we hadn't. And we've now worked together on like 4 projects.
Amazing.
My closest friends, and I love him very much. And I'm so thankful that he gave us a chance to do it.
Okay. And so in my memory, the first thing you went for was your Tonya.
Yeah. Well, so actually that was an incoming call. That was Zanidi called me that Margot had read, and she had read it. So Stephen was repped at Gersh, but it had gotten out a bit, like I mentioned, and CA just like doing their jobs well. I think we're covering like good new scripts out there. And Ida is the best if you've ever worked. I mean, she's just the smartest agent out there. And she'd read it and I think given it to Margot, who she repped as an actor and then also as a producer. And Margot connected with it. And so Ida asked if I would meet with Margot.
This is like post Wolf of Wall Street, because like now it's so hard to think of Margot Robbie as anything but most successful, prolific actress and producer working right now. But remind me where we were. Like, was that a no-brainer for you that like Margot Robbie was going to be Tonya Harding?
It was after meeting her. Like after we had that lunch, I was blown away by her. Before the lunch, I was definitely leaning in because I really thought she was amazing, but she wasn't the star she is now, but you could tell she had that upward trajectory. And I mean, frankly, the concern initially was like the likeness, like, could she play Tonya? So I called V. Neal and Nicholas Carletos, who were our makeup team on Hunger Games, and I asked, like, here's Margot, here's Don, like, can you make that happen? And I got the thumbs up there. And then when you met Margot, it was just like, she's so intelligent and she's so passionate, and she brought some real personal connection to the Tonya story. She didn't actually know about it, and that was actually really exciting too. Before reading the script, so there was a lot. She brought a lot of that empathy to it, that because she hadn't been necessarily tainted with all of the media stigmatization.
She's Australian, right? Like this was not like in her purview. This national story of 2 Olympic, figure skaters. But I had read that she didn't realize it was a true story until after she had finished the script.
Yeah, which is great. And she was this, sounds like I'm exaggerating, but she was just the best partner you could ever have. And both her and Tom, and to this day, I still consider them the best of friends, and I love them, and we travel together, and they mean so much to me. And it was one of those things where we all kind of had things to prove in that process. And we are all at this kind of really formative stage, and we just band together, and like all of us had something to offer one another that was really complimentary, and it just worked. I'm always blown away by her ability to just like, she studies it so much. And so she knows every detail backwards and forwards. And so that really helps, especially when you're doing a lower budget movie, when you don't have the
Right.
opportunity to go back and get something again and everything. She was like so on it.
You mean like of her part or like the whole thing?
Everything. It's crazy. Like she will pick something out of continuity, or she'll like remember a line or something. She's always just a safety net with her part for sure. And what she does is she just studies it. She goes into like a hole in prep and she just completely immerses herself in the story. And she's so focused.
Wow.
Has these notebooks and like, yeah, she's pretty remarkable.
Being the first U.S. woman to land a triple axel. So fuck 'em. I mean, what kind of friggin' person bashes in their friend's knee?
Another thing I remember is that you had a few suitors with regard to filmmaker. Talk about choosing Craig Gillespie and how that came about.
So Craig was a call from Rich Klubeck and Darren Freeman. And I just I loved him from the very beginning. And he understood the tone of the movie. He didn't say a lot in the meeting, but the things that he did say were totally right. And he understood comedy. And that was really important. And he also, you could tell, wasn't going to shrink away from some of the like things that mattered to Margot, Tom, Stephen, and I, like some of the thematic underpinnings of it and some of the more violent elements of it. Like he was going to tell the story as it was. And he's also a very experienced shooter. Like he makes some great movies. But he also does a ton of commercials. So he can bring a lot of energy to the story. He spoke about how he was going to shoot each skating sequence. And it was like a masterclass. And like, this is how we're going to do it.
Tell me about that. Like, tell me how he wanted to shoot those skating sequences, because they are like so fantastic, especially on your budget. I can't even imagine how you guys accomplished it.
Yeah, well, a lot of that was, again, just a lot of prep. So Craig had just shot Finest Hours, which was a huge production, water, like old, like with movie stars. And then you look at he really is, I think, like one of the most highly sought after commercial directors. And if you look at the wide breadth of stuff he had done with sports and Nike and all the stuff, so it helped close that gap a little bit. But then he wanted to bring a different tonality to the shooting for each sequence. So like some of it, you were right in there with Tonya to kind of get a sense of her subjective and also understand more of the like power that goes into it. And others he designed so it was a little bit more standoffish, as if we are in the stands, right? And we're watching come along. And all of that was speaking to where Tonya was in her arc at the moment. But the fact that he was blending character with direction, it wasn't just style for style's sake. Like he clearly understood that it was all about really understanding this complex character in Tonya.
All in service to Tonya, like all in service to like her state of mind and her place. That's such a good guide.
Yeah, which obviously also is important when we're working with Margot, and that you feel like he's speaking to the actors. And that is a tough blend to like that balance of somebody who's so visual and can step back and also punch in into some of the emotional underpinnings, and then someone that gets humor and gets the dark biting humor that Stephen writes in the script. And we met with a lot of directors, and thankfully it was great. And there was a lot of really good options, and some of the options were like at the time, quote unquote, cooler, but that was kind of goes back to that initial promise that I'd made with Stephen. They were going to more substantially unravel the script. And that was scary from just like, I wouldn't do it to Stephen. And it was also scary from like, where did we end up then? And Craig wanted to shoot the script and he had the skill set to do it. And he also, you could tell it spoke to him in a way. All of us, we had something to prove. He definitely had felt like he'd done some really big, like well-received movies, but not necessarily movies that like spoke to him and his soul and kind of found his language of what he wanted to do as a filmmaker. They were kind of servicing the larger construct of what that movie was. And this was allowed him to like be him in a way.
But Bryan, you were still like kind of a young, not inexperienced, but like this was like a big deal for you. Like, how did you know to like not say yes to maybe the sexier name at the time? Or did you just like have a gut? You were just like, no, this is the right move.
It was the gut. And I'm really appreciative. And that happened a couple times through the process where it was gut, and it was sort of the counterintuitive move. But you got to remember, like I'd already left Nina and Color Force. Like I was kind of betting. I was like, it was house money at this point. So I know why not keep like betting, and I think that's what we all had. That's the mentality we all brought to it, was like, let's just go for it, and took some chances. And I have now, like, I know more movies under my belt, like felt some of the downs of that when it doesn't go well. For that movie, it worked. Like every time we took the risk, it was the right risk to take.
Bryan, at this point, you've decided on your lead actress, your partner, and your filmmaker, but you still aren't financed. Like it's an independent project that you're packaging and putting together. What happens at this point?
Yeah, so we had Margot and Craig, we had the script, we had a budget Michael Sled put together, and then we went to go shop it, and it was with UTA and CAA. They were joint selling it, and we went out to a bunch of places, and Margot was working it. So people knew that she was really engaged and was actually going to do it. And she had promised, and that was the other thing about Margot, because there was one moment where we were wondering if we waited a beat, like we wanted to do it on time frame. And I was like, Margot, to be honest, like you're very in demand. This means a lot to us. And like, I'm scared that you'll get something else and leave. And she's like, I'm not leaving this project, I promise you. And she's always true to her word. Every time she's given me her word, it's like, it's rock solid. And so, and you knew that she was really going to fight for it. And so we started to take it to market AFM, and Margot was there and she did a presentation, and she was there with Craig, and they really sold it. There was probably about like 30, 40 buyers in the room. And so we did have some interested places, but at different levels. And also there was concerns about Tonya and the stigmatization of her. And then there was concerns about the domestic violence. And we wanted to stay true to that because we felt like otherwise it wasn't doing justice to the character. And it wouldn't have been as meaningful and powerful to understand where she comes from. And so we ultimately ended up flying to London and meeting with Vince Holden at AI, and he was with Len Blavodnik, and they also were willing to pay more money for the movie and took on more risk. And they were really great financial partners.
I remember you telling me that like the movie on paper cost one thing, but once you guys were doing it, it's an action film. I mean, it's a sports film, it's a lot of like characters and, there's some period and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, those skate sequences needed to work. And I remember you mentioning like, that was not easy to accomplish. And so talk me through, once you got your partners, like talk me through the production and how you guys were able to actually pull that stuff off effectively.
Well, that was the thing, is that nobody believed that we could do the movie at what we had it budgeted as.
It's reported at 11, but I feel like it was a little more than that, maybe.
No, it was 11. Like, yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but yeah, we were I think 10-9, and then it went up a little bit because of music. And I remember we were in certain rooms, and they were just like, the production people didn't feel comfortable that we could do it at that number, but that was what the market was. And we wanted to preserve the creative autonomy. And Craig led that charge because he had done movies where he had a ton of resources, but that comes with certain expectations And so he wanted the freedom to go and like, okay, tell me what the number is that you guys feel like you can let us go, and I'll direct it and I'll make it work. And he has the experience to do it. And so he moves so fast on set. He really drives hard, and he gets so much more than any other director I've ever worked with in a day. Like, it's incredible. And even the skating stuff, and we had that so choreographed, and we were lucky in that our camera team knew how to skate, and so they could get right in there.
The whole camera team knew how to skate?
Yeah, well, a camera operator did, and yeah, we really relied on them, and it was hard on them. Those guys really worked.
Was that like one of the prerequisites of hiring your A camera operator, or was it just like coincidental?
It was a prerequisite, but still not easy that we.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, because we really needed it. And first we were going to shoot a movie, and that didn't work, and so it was all me. But then we ended up steady camming all of it. And like, yeah, they just were awesome steady cam operators. And Craig goes so fast, and those people are so physically like exhausted. There was a lot of massages for our camera team.
How much was Margot skating? Like, talk me through the doubles and Margot. And I'd heard she was like had a slip disc, and like there was a lot of stuff being thrown at you guys. Like, talk me through that.
Yeah, so she really did it. I mean, with the exception of the actual axles, like the triple axle, but all of the actual routine was Margot. She trained a lot to do it, but she also, our skate choreographer said that she would have been an incredible, probably like an international level skater
So cool.
through that coming up, because she was able to pick it up really quickly. And I've seen her do that also in Birds of Prey, like with the dancing. She just can pick that stuff up really fast.
She's like an athlete.
Yeah, she is. And
so had she skated before? Like, had she done any of that?
no, she had like really rudimentary understanding, but she took a lot. She started early, and she actually, when she was in Australia, and she started going to the rink, and she started training, and we had coaches. But by the time we were on the day, she could do all of it. And then ironically, I think where she slipped her disc was a locked off shot that was not on the ice, and it was just her doing the twist, and we kind of punched in on her face, and it hurt her.
Okay, so we have to back up a little bit because we've talked about Margot, but like the whole cast is like chef's kiss. We use that a lot. Like Sebastian Stan, Paul Walter Hauser. We have to talk about Janny, who I heard Stephen Rogers had written the part for. So talk me through like the casting process. It's just like so strong.
Yeah, we were very involved in that. It was Mary Vernew and Lindsey Graham, and
oh, cool.
They are really good at what they do, and we've worked together now so many times, and I'm always blown away with how much they'll go like the extra mile. And so obviously the Galooly role was really crucial, and Margot read against a lot of actors.
Oh, that's cool. She would like come in and do chemistry reads or whatever?
Yeah, with like all the Galoolys and a lot, and we really were working on that, and that was fun to watch. But then Sebastian, he just brought it, I mean, from the get-go. And the thing that was amazing was that he brought a physicality to it in the audition right off the bat, where it actually like built into a bit of a fight. So that just showed he was so in it. He also has this ability, and Craig speaks so eloquently about this, but he's like, he can be, everybody can be funny without trying to be funny. They bring that natural kind of energy to it. And that was always a real litmus test, is like, are these people like making us laugh as people? And he definitely had that. So yeah, that was electric when the two of them in the room, and then they started fighting, and they're going at it, and then like immediately they kissed, and it was just a great audition.
Like it just kind of happened spontaneously and sort of took a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, Craig and Mary knew immediately about that, and when we watched the tapes, it was just like, it was really clear that Sebastian was the guy, and that was nice also because Sebastian is very valuable, and he's in the Marvel universe, but we were given the freedom to not have to go just cast based off of international value. And at that point, now with Sebastian's value, it'd be no problem. But at the time, like, we were able to cast him, and it was really nice that our financiers allowed that.
Tell me about like the other Like, was it written for Allison?
Yeah. Stephen and Allison go way back. Stephen was an actor and were in like acting school together and have been lifelong friends, like best friends. And so he had always written that role for Allison. And so that was nice for me because she was basically attached with the script. And she was just like, we didn't know what we were going to get. And then she just brought it on the day, like, and we were all just like blown away. And then all of that with the interviews, we shot those all in like one afternoon. Like that was like 3 hours, like back to back. And she gave all of that. And then one of my favorite memories is the oxygen tank was like her, because we weren't able to have her smoking cigarettes. She's chain smoking cigarettes throughout the entire movie, but because we had the bird on her shoulder, we weren't able to have the smoke. And so that was her idea.
Oh, because it would have been like a PETA like it would have been like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
So we had that oxygen tank, which just brought so much to it. And that was Allison's idea. Jade Healy, our production designer and overseeing stunts, like she had come prepared so that we had that on set, but it was Jenny's idea to bring that into it. And
so genius, so good.
She's like, I mean, she's mean and vicious, but you never like really dislike Allison Janney.
Even as she's like, she finds the wire and she's like the ultimate betrayal of her daughter. It's like, you're still kind of laughing and like, she's still like, she's just like, you know, she's just surviving. I thought she was so good.
Yeah. And she won an Oscar for that.
I had forgotten she'd won the Oscar for that. It's incredible.
I made you a champion, knowing you'd hate me for it. That's the sacrifice a mother makes. I wish I'd had a mother like me instead of nice. Nice gets you shit. I didn't like my mother either, so what? I fucking gave you a gift.
You cursed me.
You haven't heard of Nancy Kerrigan?
Oh, yeah. I thought you said Nancy Herring.
Sean?
Jeff did it.
Paul Walter Hauser, who is just like one of the greats. He just always like slips into these great character roles and like does it so believably. He can play the smartest guy in the room or the dumbest guy in the room, and you believe both.
I know, and he was at the time, a discovery. I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about now because he's had such a great run.
Yeah.
But that was Marianne Lindsay, who they highlighted him off of a bunch of reads. Before we even got the read, they found him off of a Broken Lizard clip. And like basically he was just perfect. And we were supposed to have Josh Gad for that role because
oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, Josh couldn't do it because of scheduling. I mean, obviously Josh is amazing, but like it's hard now to think about that role as anybody but Paul. And he was the life of the set, and he came every day, even if he wasn't working. Like, he was just really fun.
That dude, I've had like a couple meetings with him that he probably doesn't, the story of my life, not the story of his, but I just find him to be just so warm and engaging. He told me the story of how he got into the business. He just sent like hundreds of cold emails to different managers. And finally someone responded. Like, I was just like, yes, man. He was like from the middle of whatever, nowhere. And I'm just like, sometimes good dudes win, you know, like so great. And now he's like the star of the Chris Farley biopic with Josh Gad, which I'm so excited about.
So, yeah.
He did his Chris Farley impression. I was like, oh my God, you are Chris Farley. He's going to kill it. So was the shoot, Bryan, it's a lot on your shoulders. Is it going well? Is it constantly a stress to like be making your days? Like, do you remember back to that time?
Yeah, the shoot was really in Atlanta and then Macon. I remember it really fondly, but in the day-to-day of it, it was stressful, but it was stressful for things that are oftentimes like external factors, like the ice would be melting on the rink and we couldn't figure out why. And actually, weirdly, you actually make it warmer, not colder, but like things like that. Like, so it was safety around that. It was always tough with budget. Like, it was still, we made it, and Craig was a hero to get him into that box. But I don't know if anyone else could have, but it was tough. And Craig just kept wanting as much as he could get to make sure we had a lot of options in post. And he's kind of a guy that doesn't take a ton of takes. He just enough takes that you actually need, but he loves setups. And so we were always running, like really moving fast. And the crew, and like I said, like the crew is a physically demanding show. So that chunk of it was hard on everybody, but stuff was working. We could tell it was working.
So you were watching dailies and you were like, okay, this is working. Like things are gelling.
Yeah, definitely. Like when we started seeing sequences, and that's one thing that's great about Craig is on the day he can cut it together. Like so you'll actually see like the scene and you're like, that's a great scene. Like I know that's a great scene. The only question is like how is it all going to cut together? But we knew we had some great shit in between.
So going into edit, you kind of had like a sense of what the energy was and what the performances were. Like you had seen some stuff.
That was another challenge is because of Margot's injury, we weren't able to get the boxing. So and that was the important part of the whole movie, obviously. And so we weren't sure how that was going to cut together, but we felt pretty confident about the stuff. And then we all went to New York to watch the cut because that's where Craig posted. And like I remember Margot and Tom and I were living, we got an Airbnb together and we like
Of course.
prepped ourselves where we were like, okay, no matter what we see, we're going to play it like close to the vest because then we'll just buy options. And like we could all, even if we love it, like we're just going to like that we could be cool. And then like we weren't cool at all. We saw the cut. We're like, we were pumped. Like it was
Were there
hilarious
tears?
and great.
Like were you guys just like high-fiving?
We were really proud of Craig and like the movie felt like it was working and it was like I said, there was things to do and we had to modulate certain things tonally and there was just questions about like length and certain pacing stuff, but the movie was there and
Such a relief. So did you guys need to pick up anything?
yeah, we ended up reshooting Margot's direct address interview. We did that on day one and then it was so hot. And then all of her makeup and the prosthetics kind of melted off. Plus, she hadn't found the character as complete as she had by the end of the shoot. So when we did it again at the end of the shoot, and we also had a better set. And so we did that again.
The purple lipstick moment where she's like smiling and then crying, that thing?
No, that we got
Okay.
actually. That was, we rushed to get before the end of the day. And Margot only had, I'm honestly like 5 minutes to get that.
It's like the performance of the film. I mean, it's so incredible.
That and her in the courtroom, I think are like two of the most incredible performances. And both were, again, you just didn't have time.
She's like Jordan, like she just like clutch, like she delivers. That's why she is who she is. I just like, so cool. It's so great. Do you test the movie? Like, what's the plan? You take it to festival? Like, tell me what happens next.
Yeah, we didn't have I don't think we had the budget to test it officially. I don't remember, but I don't think we did it, but we did do some friends
And family. You collect like 25 people, and ask them to sit in a room and tell you if you like it.
And there was also we did an interesting thing because the ending was a little bit open and there's a little bit of disagreement about how to end it. And actually, I think Tom McCarthy gave Craig a suggestion to cut over the feet, which was really cool from one cool director to another cool director.
Yes.
We tested 2 endings with a crowd. We actually played it through and then backed up like 7
No way.
minutes.
No way.
And we took a vote. And it was very clear what the crowd thought, which is what we suspected, but we just wanted to.
So
to
what
try
was
that.
the
So
alternative that you were considering?
there was more going to Tonya's like current life with a husband, and then she shot like a giant buck or something. We got like there was like there was more of that, but we didn't feel like we necessarily needed it.
Did Tonya see the movie?
Yes, so that was actually my job. So I flew up to Portland.
And did she ever come to the set? Like, talk about her involvement and like.
No, she never came to set, but she did check in, and she had a manager she later fired. So I don't feel bad about saying the guy was a shady dude. Not my favorite guy to deal with throughout the course of the movie, because it was always just like, I don't know, took a lot of time and he wasn't honest. But we did talk to Tonya and she was always like delightful and cool through it. And Margot had talked to her, and I think Craig too. And then I had an ongoing thing. Steven certainly was speaking to her because he had started this whole thing.
Yeah.
So she didn't come to set. But then when once we had the cut, then I flew up to Portland and we got actually like a mall Cineplex. Like we screened it in one of those theaters up there for her and her husband.
Oh my God.
And I was really nervous
Sure.
about that because, I just didn't know how she would react.
And it was
to
just you, Bryan?
Yeah. And
Oh my God.
and we like pounded a couple drinks first and like watched this movie.
Was that your idea? Were you like, let's have a beer?
I think so. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, that was smart. That's smart.
I like loosened it up a bit, and and she was really, really happy, and I was such a relief, and it meant a lot to us as a group that she was, and she was like there throughout she came to the Golden Globes, and she was there for some of those parties and everything, so that was really cool.
So just take me through how you ended up selling to Neon. Remind me of that sequence of events.
Yeah, so that was out of Toronto, and that was a really stressful weekend. I'm sure you've been a part of those where you're like screening it. And we were opening night and it was electric in that theater. So it felt really good. It was like definitely had great energy. But we didn't know really what to expect as far as like who was going to come in. And then that night, you go to the party and you're trying to like focus on just having fun, but of course, the elephant in the room is like, is anybody going to pick up this movie?
Totally. It's the worst and the best.
Yeah. And people were kind of flirting with it. And at the time, like Harvey Weinstein was around,
Sure.
and he tried to preempt it, and we didn't do that. And then he made a big deal, like an asshole, like total asshole, like cast in like glorious fashion. So then, of course, everybody's watching Harvey, what they're doing. He was just doing it out of spite because we didn't preempt.
The worst.
And the worst on so many levels. And so like that kind of took some of the wind out of our sails because we felt like at least we had that. Terry Press was around there, and then she kind of flittered away. And by the way, good riddance, because Terry Press had not the best take on how to market that movie. And so we were not feeling all that happy at that moment, at that night.
Yeah.
And Netflix was there, and they were super great. And we had a great meeting with Julie Fontaine, and then we were feeling better the next day after with Julie. But ultimately, it kind of came down to Neon, and at the time, Annapurna was doing distribution.
Right.
And that was a question. It was just like, again, when you talk about that gut, like Tom Quinn, he definitely had something to prove. He was just starting, and he had done really successful documentaries, and we knew he had to know how to do that like grassroots marketing. And we had 2 meetings with him, and it was going to be the jewel in his crown, and he made that really clear. And he was an unknown quantity. Neon is now, one of the best in cream of crop, but we didn't know that they were going to for sure be that. But that was where Margot, Tom, and Craig and I really like looked Tom in the eye. And it wasn't the advice of some of the other advisors. But we were like, let's give this a shot. And he did it great by us. And Christian and his marketing team, they were all amazing. And they also, a big question was, were they going to turn it around for the award season?
Right. It all happened within weeks, right? You were at that Toronto and then you were out very quickly after?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we had to turn it around, and they gave the case for how they were going to make the marketing materials quickly.
Oh my God.
And it was really great. And then they pushed it, and throughout the whole process for the awards and everything, they ended up really supporting Jenny and got her an Oscar, and Margot got nominated and everything. So I think it was pretty cool.
Such a great end to the story, honestly. Why do you think this movie sort of has become one that people continue to talk about and is a legacy?
real. I truly mean this, and it's not just me being like political or what have you. It's like it really was the perfect combination of a bunch of people bringing all of themselves to it. And like I think you look at Steven and Margot and Craig, like it was just a perfect blend of voices there. And everybody really cared and bled for it. And something to say, we also, it was like one where we pushed and pushed and pushed to have it be as risky as we could. And it just seems like it connected. And I think people loved seeing Margot take like that lead role.
Yeah.
And do you think that the subject matter was something that it felt enough tabloidy that people were kind of interested in it, and it surprised people with some of its undertones? So I think that had an effect too, where you're like, oh, I sized up the movie and it's actually better than you would ever expect it to be. Just like maybe I sized up Tonya, and maybe there's more to that too. And I think that whole conversation helped us. And then like beyond that, it's just a fun ride. Like it was fun and crazy and rambunctious and loud.
Yes.
Big, and I think it didn't feel like homework.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that kind of made it work.
Bryan, we talk a lot about, we call it the Rebel Alliance, the producers and filmmakers who are trying to like continue to make this like original, daring, bold content, right? And like to make the theatrical experience stick around, and the notion of filmmaking. Like, I just fucking love these movies that are bold and like they have something to say, and there's like multiple layers. I just love the title, I, Tonya, and it's just, you can watch that movie again and again and get something different from it. And so I applaud your courage and your leadership, and keep doing it. I think it's an extraordinary movie, and thank you so much for coming on. This was like so fun.
Oh yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. Really, it was nice to talk through it. It was fun to go down memory lane.
That's the story of my life. And that's the fucking truth.
I love the story of that movie. You know what I love is that like they were all kind of scrappy. I mean, it really is the tale of Stay Gold, but like they were scrappy. They like went for it. He was like just breaking out on his own. Bryan was starting a new company. He like communicated true passion for this script, which was a little bit of a hot script. And he won the day and just like produced the hell out of the movie, as did Margot and Tom Ackerley. They like assembled a team that were all there for the right reasons. They weren't there to get rich. They were there to like make a great feature film, and they totally accomplished it. So I loved hearing that till the end, till like Neon picked it up and were like going all in on this movie because they were a scrappy young company themselves. I love that.
And then it won Oscars. It's so wild.
I know. Allison Janney winning the Oscar was just like so amazing.
So crazy. I couldn't believe, I actually was truly shocked when he confirmed that the budget was actually $11 million. I thought that was one of those just rumored numbers and it had to be way higher than that. But when he was like, no, we really made it for $11 million.
It's so funny you say that, Bex, because I was just listening. I think it was like The Watch or The Town this morning, and they were talking about how Fall Guy is a little bit of a disappointment, even though it made $30 million this weekend, because it was made for $130 million. And that really is a sort of romantic comedy wrapped up in an action film, sort of Trojan horse situation. Mm-hmm. And really that movie should be made for less, right? And if it were made for less, making $30 million on the opening weekend would not be considered, it's not that it's a disaster, but it didn't surpass anyone's expectations. And I think Universal was like really, really hoping that would make more.
Right.
And I hear this story of I, Tonya, and I'm just like, they made this amazing movie where the action sequences are completely incredible, and they made it for $11 million. And by the way, it wasn't easy, but if they had $15 million, it probably would have been like, not easy peasy, but it's like all about setting expectations.
Right.
And so I just sort of feel like our system has to like be broken a bit. And these movies should be made for less money. And then we can all survive and we can have successful feature films in the theaters. And it's a bloated business. And I think we've always been a company that like really tries to tighten and make things for as little as they can be made for so that everyone can participate in success. But it's not the way the Hollywood is built, and certainly not the studio system. So I was like, I loved hearing the way they made this movie, and it was probably a financial success for them.
Right.
Do you remember our Hamptons weekend where we were hanging out with those guys and it was the most fun ever?
I do. It's very vivid because that was such a fun weekend.
Oh,
it was fun because we got to attend a festival. Now, first of all, the Hamptons Film Festival is so much fun. Obviously, you're in the Hamptons and it's beautiful, and it's just, the vibes there are just,
it's like the perfect weather, little sweater weather. Yeah.
So wonderful. And we didn't have a movie there, so we weren't undergoing the stress of having a movie at the festival. You were on the jury, so we were just there, watching movies and having a good time.
Riding bikes.
Seeing
good movies. It was the best. We met Timmy and Armie Hammer. Remember that?
Because they were there with Call Me By Your Name.
Yes.
And it was this little skinny kid, Timothée Chalamet, and we were just blown away by him. And we were like, oh my gosh. And he was so nice. And then I remember we were very intimidated by Armie Hammer.
Well, Armie Hammer, listen, Armie Hammer is a totally separate issue, but I remember him being very, very lovely. And he's one of these types who's always says, it's nice to see you. Like he covers himself, we've clearly never met, but he doesn't want to assume we've never met because he was the biggest movie star in the room at the moment.
Which, by the way, the room was a very small room. It was
it was a small room. It was very intimate. It was so random.
Like it was so random. It was like this big party, but then everyone was leaving, and it was like just us in the room with Timmy and Armie. Like it was such a weird situation, but it was so much fun.
Oh, it was the best. And Timmy told this story about how he had just done a Woody Allen movie. Do you remember this part?
Yes.
He had and this was like the story he was telling because it was the first time he was on the awards campaign trail. And he told this story about how he'd just done a movie with Woody Allen, and Woody kept being like, Timmy, you're so good. And it was because he had rehearsed with the other actor, sidebar rehearsed without Woody's oversight. And Woody was like, wow, you're really good. You really know your lines. And he's like, Woody, it's because I rehearsed. And I remember being like, that is so crazy. Again, the story of my life.
I love that.
So that was so fun. And then that night we went to the Stephen Talk House and we ran into Bryan and Tom Ackerley, and they were just on the tour with their movie. They had just been picked up, and suddenly Neon was putting the movie at every festival possible because they were trying to get sort of awards awareness for the movie and Allison and Margot. And so we had this super fun night with them.
I remember they were having the time of their lives because you're right. They were just
loving it.
The stress of having to sell the movie was off of them, and they were just enjoying it. And so that night, were we just there all night? Because I remember we were in this back patio and we were just drinking, and it was just the four of us just having the best time. I think until they kicked us out.
Then we got in Uber backs, and it was the wrong Uber. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember us getting lost at some point.
Some nightmarish end.
That day.
Some horror movie end to a really lovely evening.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a great one. The movie is so good. I loved watching it again. Bex, you do the wrap up.
Well, remember to like and subscribe, loyal listeners. Not only is our company at Stay Gold Features on Instagram, but our specific podcast is at Hollywood Gold Pod on Instagram. So make sure to follow both. Make sure to check out our merch. We have both Stay Gold merch and Hollywood Gold merch on our website if you go to staygoldfeatures.com/merch. And remember to always stay gold.
Stay gold, guys.